The reason I'm starting this channel is for a lot of different reasons. First and foremost, applying to dental school was single-handedly the most scary and difficult thing that I've ever done. And I know that I wanted something, that I could use as a resource, maybe someone else that was going through what I went through. And I didn't really have that. I'll say that Brittany Watu, I subscribe to her channel. I think she's amazing. I'll put her link in the description. And kind of seeing her videos was really helpful and watching that. And I kind of wanted to, do something like that through my perspective. Not only that, I'm going to be moving out here pretty soon in the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to be going over to San Francisco. And like I said, I've never moved out before, so I know that a lot of you might be in that same boat, or maybe some of you have already moved. You'd like to see someone like me, go through it, and kind of the struggles that I've gone through, and just advice for people that are going through that. And lastly, I'm going to be in one of the most beautiful cities I think that there are. And I'd love to kind of document this, not only, just for myself, but for others. Maybe, make it as interesting as possible. So kind of going forward, so like I said, most of you here are most likely applying to dental school, or they're in dental school. And I just want to say to all of you that are making that choice, congratulations on making what I believe to be the most important and best decision I've ever made. But I want you to know that, if you are choosing that path, which again I do agree with, obviously, since I did it, it is extremely expensive. To give you an idea, I applied to 14 schools. Now, with these 14 schools, with the ADSAS, or the primary application, and the secondary fees, I spent about $2,800 just on the application alone. Now, that's not including the DAT. That's not including anything else. That's just those. That's not including any, interview, travel, things like that. And I'll get into all those things later. I just wanted to let you guys know it costs that much just to apply, just for them to read it and say, nah. So this is extremely expensive. I'm sure if you've gotten this far, you've kind of, looked into that somewhat, I hope. And if not, well, surprise, it's really expensive. So start saving up. So next I kind of want to go into, I hope you know that if you've made it this far in terms of now you're applying, you've already done the hard part. The hard part is going to school. The hard part is doing all the tests, taking all those units while volunteering, while tutoring, while working, while whatever. I know that I was extremely busy, leading up to that. And I applied after my 4th year, not my 3rd year. So, that's a lot of time. So you've spent a lot longer working on this application than you think, because everything that you did prior to this application is going to go on that application. Is going to be the things that get you into dental school or don't get you into dental school, whether that be grades, whether that be DAT score, whether that be volunteering, shadowing, being the president of the pre-dental club, whatever, what have you. You've already done that. So congratulations on getting this far. That is awesome. It's great. Now, getting started, I think there's some really important factors that, we need to kind of understand. First and foremost is having a good support system. I think this is probably the most underrated thing that anyone, kind of really thinks about. I know that I really didn't notice it until I was really, really, really down in the dumps, and I had that support system to help me up. My girlfriend was absolutely, positively the best person for me in terms of not only being there, not only picking my head up, but being honest with me. She read all of my personal statements. She read all of anything that I put in writing. She read. Now, my girlfriend, I love her for a lot of reasons, and one of those is her honesty, because she was tough on me. She told me, no, this sucked. She told me, no, this is horrible. They're not going to accept you with this. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's needed, because I think sometimes we get it too into our heads like, oh, this sounds great, I'm going to get in for sure. It's not always necessarily the case, because remember that while you or maybe your loved ones might read it and they know you and they think that you're great, the admissions committee, who ultimately their decision is the only one that matters, they're the ones who are reading it. They don't know you. They know you on a piece of paper with the writing that you put. You want that writing to be absolutely perfect. And the only way to get that is to have someone like my girlfriend be honest with you, right, and go through every single thing with a fine-tooth comb. Now, secondly, kind of along with that, support system is, loved ones, friends. I know that this is an application. I know that this is everything that you've worked for. At least it was for me. And I think it's easy to get sidetracked in terms of, no, I'm not going to hang out with my friends, or no, I'm not going to have any time. Just application, application, application. That's fine and that's good. But again, you want to make sure that there's a balance there, because anything that's unbalanced is not good. And then I kind of want to get into it. I hope this is a huge relief for everyone. Do not let your statistics ruin your life. Now, for myself, like I said, I applied to 14 schools. I knew that I had to because I had low statistics. To give you an idea, out of the 14 schools, I had interviews at 4 of them. The interviews were at UOP, BU, UPenn, and NYU, and I had a 3.31 BCP, 3.38 cumulative GPA, and a 20 AA on my DAT with a 16 on the PAT. Yes, a 16. I only took the DAT once. But again, those are not good numbers. I guarantee a good majority of you watching this have better numbers than that, and that's great. That's awesome. But what I want to do in sharing that with you is, kind of give you an idea, a frame of reference of, wow, someone with not that great of statistics, had some pretty good success when it comes to, applying to dental school. And what I can tell you is the reason I think I was successful is because 2 reasons. One, I was extremely strategic with how I applied to dental school. And secondly, I understood my application honestly. Now, one, I want to get into strategy. Now, even though I just said I had a strategy, this is a wrong strategy that I had that I don't want you to do. I applied late. My send out date, so basically when you fill out your application and you press submit on ADSAS. ADSAS is an acronym that basically, that's your common application. You have to fill that out first before you communicate with any other school. My mail out date, or the send out date, the day I pressed submit, was October 14th. That was terrifying. Do not do that. I would like you to apply in any month that starts with a J, excluding January, meaning June or July. Now, having said that, applying too early is a real thing, meaning that if you're just trying to race through it and get it done, but don't have everything there, you're not helping yourself out, or maybe causing mistakes, which I think a lot of people do. That's not good. Remember that you're applying for professional school. By professional school, they want to see you be a professional. If you have typos, if you have things like that in your application, that's not professional. So make sure it's done. But once it's done, get it in. And lastly, what I mean by understanding myself honestly is I knew I had low statistics. I knew that. You have to know that. I have to be honest with myself in knowing that. Now, I did apply to some bigger schools like Harvard, like Columbia, right? I didn't get into those schools. I'll be honest with you. But again, Penn, UOP, BU, all of those schools had average statistics that were way higher than me. You have to remember that when you're looking at averages, those are averages. You don't know the range. You don't know, you don't know all the things. And so just looking at averages, I want you to be careful about that, because I had lower averages than every school that I went to. I still had an interview. And once you get to the interview, it's anyone's game after that point. So when it comes to applying to schools, you need to be very smart in terms of applying to schools. My rule of thumb was I'm not going to apply to a school that I would not go to, because God forbid, if I get into one school, it's going to be that one school that I don't want to go to. And wouldn't that really suck if you spent all that money, all that time, and you only got into the school that you didn't get into, right? Be careful with what you wish for. So when it comes to the schools that you're applying to, you already know what you want. You already kind of use their websites. They have great resources. Or pick up the telephone. I know you're all on your cell phones anyway. You're probably watching this on your cell phone, right? Or texting on it as we speak. Use your cell phone, use your home phone, call the school. Now, when you call the school, be professional, right? Say, hello, my name is Jordan Barnett. I'm, currently applying in the cycle, and I just had a couple of questions for you. When it comes to asking the questions, make sure you're asking them questions that are not on the website. Every website has a link that says FAQ, which stands for Frequently Asked Questions. Do not ask them a question that is on the FAQ list, because what that tells me, if I was that person, was, wow, you really didn't go to our website. You didn't even try. Right? Remember that dentistry is a science-based profession. Science is based on research. If you can't even do, if you can't even go on your computer or on your phone now and go to the website and look at that, that doesn't really speak highly of you. You don't want that. So make sure that you're asking them questions that are not posted anywhere. And with all schools, they all have different requirements. You'll notice that they might say, we want 3 letters, 2 of which are from a science professor. Okay, well, that's kind of ambiguous. Are they a lecture professor that you've had a lecture with? Are they just maybe, can you have a lab TA that you had? Or it might say 1 person in dentistry. Does that mean a dentist? By the way, if they ever say that, yes, that means a general dentist. Why? Because you are applying to dental school to be a general dentist, to get either a DDS or a DMD. So make sure that they are a general dentist. Having a specialist, well, that kind of varies on different schools, but I would make sure that you would have at least 1 letter from a dentist. Even if the school says, we don't need it, or they don't, put that out right, never a bad idea. Why? Because you want to be a dentist. And for someone, a dentist, saying that you would be a good dentist is probably a pretty good idea. What kind of gets confusing, especially when you apply to, like me, like 14 schools, is, oh my God, there's all these schools. How do I make sure that I get all of the letters right that I need? Because for some of these schools, if you don't have exactly what they want, for example, Loma Linda, I know they wanted one from a spiritual advisor. Okay, well, if I don't have a letter from a spiritual advisor, what does that look like on my part? To me, if I were the admissions committee, I'd say, okay, well, we clearly asked for a letter from a spiritual advisor, and Jordan did not provide one. So what that tells me, again, is, wow, he can't read directions. Would someone who can't read directions be good at operating on people? Probably not. So the best way to organize these things is using Excel spreadsheet, or maybe you use the Numbers app on Mac, whatever. Definitely write those out. I have one that I've used. I'd be more than happy if you send me an email to disperse you the one that I used for myself. That way I could organize myself and make that easiest. But and again, when it comes, like I said, I just want to reiterate, to knowing your application, you need to know your grades and your DAT scores. Those are so important, because while a lot of schools say, well, we look at you holistically as a well-rounded applicant, those are necessary. Why are those necessary? Because I know maybe if you're like me, you have low grades. I have all this experience. Who cares about my grades? I had a bad year, bad semester, bad life, whatever, right? Why are they important? Well, they're important because you're applying to dental school. You need to learn these things. You need to know, what happens biologically, scientifically to a patient when you're working on them, right? That'd be kind of scary if you were the dentist and they said, I'm not sure if this would be okay with this, but whatever, we'll try it. It's not good, right? They need to make sure that you're going to be able to handle the large load of science classes they're going to be presented with, right? So how do you show that you're able to handle that? Is through grades and is through, a DAT. Now, if you have bad grades, a great equalizer is the DAT. Now, it's not an end-all be-all. Remember that nothing I say is an end-all be-all. There's always exceptions to every rule. Take me, for example. I had low grades and a low DAT, and I still got into places, that were bigger than me in terms of numbers. But nevertheless, I had basic minimums. I had a 20 on, the DAT. Yes, I had a 3.31, and that was because I did really poorly my first 2 years. But my last 3 years, I averaged about a 3.8, 3.9 in upper division science classes. So to those of you maybe who have low GPAs, right, in science, especially from science classes, beginning science classes, like your intro bios, your intro chemistry, your intro physics or something like that, take upper level, right, or upper division science classes, primarily biology. Because remember that as a dentist, you'll be trained in the biomedical sciences. So you can say, well, there's some room there. And I said that in my interviews. Well, Jordan, you didn't have a very good GPA. True. But if you notice, I did poorly in the beginning of college in my intro bios. And the reason for that is I was getting adjusted to college, right? But notice on my application that, in the later years when I took things like microbiology, when I took things, like that, I did pretty well. So I'm showing or I'm displaying that I do have that, maturity and ability to do well in those classes. And even though I said I only had a 20 on the DAT, that was still enough, to say, well, I guess he knows what he's doing. This is important. Now, you can have, letters of recommendation from Obama himself, right? But, if you don't have the grades or the numbers to back that up, then people are going to question if, your ability to do well in dental school. Now, a huge part, like I said already, is the letters of recommendation. Now, like I said, most schools want 3 letters, but AdTest allows you to upload 4. So what that means for you as an applicant is you should have 4. Why should you have 4? Is because remember that you want your application to be as interesting and compelling as possible, so that when, let's say, the admissions staff reads it, they'll be like, wow, I would love to meet this person in person. That's called an interview. You want that, right? So what you want to do on your paper, and by your paper I mean your application, is you want to give them the most complete and accurate and interesting picture about yourself. Remember, it's kind of the equivalent, if you think about it, of asking someone on a date only on Facebook, only they can't see your profile picture. They have no idea about that. They just have a bunch of information about you. So it'd probably be best to give them as much information as possible. So what that means is when you're with your letters, even if the school or some of the schools you're applying to only want 3, upload 4. Because when AdSAS sends out your application, it sends it as a PDF file, it's going to have all of your letters on it. Even if they only want 3, your 4th one will be there. They will read it. Why? Because they want to know as much as they can about you to make a decision if they want to meet you or not. So have 4. Now, when it comes to letters, I think a lot of people, they do it completely wrong, honestly. What they do is they think, oh, I've had a teacher for, X time ago. They're going to write me a good one because I did great in their class. We had a bunch of conversations, but that was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, like most people don't even remember what they had for breakfast. How are they going to remember you from 3 years ago? I don't care if you're that really cool kid who had all the good questions. They're not going to remember that from 3 years ago, right? Most schools are on a semester system or even a quarter system. So since they've had probably, sets of hundreds of kids, to see after you. How are they going to remember you unless you've kept up with that, unless you've kept up with that relationship, either through office hours or maybe you're in a research lab with them. So, you want to make sure that you're getting letters from people that know you. Now, having said that, out of my 4 letters, I'd say 2 of them, especially one of them, I almost did not know this person. Now, I know I just said, well, Jordan, you just said that you wanted from someone that knows you. True. So what I made sure is, since I didn't know him, that was the dentist. I made sure that I got to know him and he got to know me. So what I did was I said, hi, my name's Jordan. I'd love to have a letter from you, but I'd like, to get to know you and for you to get to know me and why I'd be good at dentistry. Do you have 5 minutes? Maybe we can, grab coffee, or maybe we can just have a conversation. And tell them that I really respect who you are, and I think that, I would love to have your name associated with my application. And this is why I'm going to be good at dentistry. It's always why I'll be good at dentistry, why I'll be good at dentistry. Now, what I did, what a lot of people don't do, is with all my letter writers, I didn't say, hi, can you write me a letter? Okay, thanks, bye. No, I didn't do that. I gave them an updated resume. I gave them a draft of my personal statement. It wasn't my final personal statement. It actually changed quite a bit from there. But at least they had a gist of, what I was writing about. And lastly, I had each letter writer focus on something different. Now, in my applications, I had 2 science professors, one that I had a lab class with as well as a lecture class, so that way he got to see me work with my hands. I had one who I had a lecture class with only. I had one from my boss, because I worked as a tutor at my undergraduate institution. And lastly, the dentist, I actually worked for him. I got to work in a private practice this last year, which was a wonderful experience, which I'll do a whole video about, and why I think people should work in dentistry versus just shadow or volunteer in dentistry. But with each of these people, I gave them those 2 documents, again, the updated resume, as well as a draft of my personal statement, And lastly, I also gave them a cover letter. On this cover letter, right, I had 3 paragraphs. My first paragraph was, thank you so much for the relationship we've had, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I humbly ask you for a letter of recommendation. After that, mind you, this is after I already asked them in person if they can write me a letter of recommendation. And I shook their hand and said, thank you so much, right? So again, in the letter, I'm readdressing, can you write me a letter of recommendation, right? You can be bold and say, thank you for agreeing to write me a letter of recommendation, but that's kind of presumptuous. I wouldn't go that far. In my second paragraph, that was a specific paragraph. By the way, that first paragraph was the same in all of my cover letters. The second paragraph, right, was an individual paragraph, meaning that I wrote it differently for each of the 4 people that I asked a letter from. In this paragraph, I asked them specific things, or I told them specific things about me, thus for them to focus on that. For example, I told you that I had a professor who was not only my lecture teacher, but also he was a lab teacher. So what I did in that paragraph, I said, hey, look, I had you in that lab, and I reminded him what the lab was by the name. So that was Chem 156. I said, hey, I had you in Chem 156. I learned so much. I learned how to do things with my hands. I remember you commenting on my ability to, use the micropipette and how I was, had good hand skills. So again, that was maybe my manual dexterity letter. That's what I called them, my manual meaning a letter that was going to focus on my manual dexterity. And of course, I put in there, I'd like you to focus, if you could, on my manual dexterity, since you know that, right? The second one I had was a lecture class, and that was a little different lecture class. That was biophysical chemistry, but I used that, and that was much more theoretical class. And I asked a lot of questions, and luckily I did take it right before I applied. So I would go into his office frequently, and I'd ask questions that were far above the level of our class, just because I was interested, not because I was some brainiac. Remember, I had a low GPA, so I'm not exceptionally smart. I just would ask questions because I was interested in the subject. And he liked that. And he liked how he many times was like, I really like the way that you think. So of course, that was my thinking letter, because I want dental schools to know that I can think well, right? So in that letter, I said, the same first paragraph like always, and said, hey, I really enjoyed your class. I learned X, Y, Z. I liked talking to you. I appreciate you saying that I have good questions, blah, 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 blah. Can you please focus on that for my letter? Boom, it says right there. Because I already gave him things to talk about. Oh yeah, that's right, he's a good question asker. Oh yeah, that's right, he's a thinker. Perfect. I want people in dental school to think that I can do that. Next one was my boss from the Learning Center. Or the Learning Center is what we call it's the tutoring center, where I was a tutor. He got to see me be a tutor. He got to see me know things in terms and explain things to people. Now in dentistry, any healthcare, it's vastly important that we can explain things to people. It's no good just fixing people, in their ailments, but not explaining to them why you're doing what you're doing. I think, now this is a personal belief, that's probably arguably one of the most important things. It's fine to say, okay, my mouth hurts and I'm going to fix your mouth, but explaining to people and, educating them as to what they can do to stop that is so important. So of course, I asked my boss, say, hey, you saw me do that, and as well as you saw me be a leader, right? You saw me, because I ended up being, kind of a mentor for some of the younger tutors, because I was there for, 6 semesters. I said, hey, you saw me in that role as well. I'd like you to, talk about that, please. And then lastly, from the dentist, he saw me, because I worked in the front office, right? So I got to do insurance, I got to do, work with patients, I got to schedule them, work with the schedule. So he got to see me work with patients. And he got to see me learn a difference. I use Dentrix at the office. That's what they use, right? He got to see me in a dental environment, and he saw that I would be good in that environment. So again, there's 4 letters that all focused on 4 different aspects of me. Remember, it's a picture of me. I want it as interesting and compelling as I can. So now I just gave you 4 different things. If you don't do that, right, most people are the same person everywhere, everywhere they go. My name's Jordan. I'm Jordan here. I'm Jordan at home. I'm Jordan at school, at work, wherever, right? So if I don't give people specific things to write about, they might write about the same thing. Why? Because I'm the same person. So again, by doing that, what you're doing is you're forcing them to be like, oh, yeah, okay, well, let me think about, Jordan or Johnny or whoever you are, right, in that specific context, and they can write about you in that specific context. Again, giving the admissions committee, which is the most important thing, the most broad and, colorful image of you. So when it comes to your personal statement, right, there is a prompt. Even though it doesn't say that there's a prompt, there is a prompt. And that prompt is twofold, meaning that there's two parts. One, why dentistry? Almost everyone answers that, and that's pretty quick. But the second one is, what are your future plans, or what will you do, in dentistry? Now, this is impossibly important in terms of your entire application and in terms of, who you are, because this is important for you. Right? I think it's so easy to think, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to write about, but what this should be is this should be a reflection of your experiences. And each experience that you've had should either, have developed a skill that will be important for you to use in dentistry, or, will give you a new insight into the field and has changed you forever. I don't say that like I think it's, BS. I'm just saying like this should be important and it should be written about well, right? Now, I think when it comes to personal statements, it's really easy to kind of get away from ourselves in terms of, oh, I know what I know me, I know, whatever. And you kind of don't really look at it with the right lens. Remember, the person or the people that are going to read this that are ultimately important are people that do not know you. They only have a piece of paper that you gave them, that piece of paper being your application, right? So what I would do is give it to, your parents, or give it to a friend and say, hey, read this. I know you know me, but just read this. And can you answer these two questions? Why dentistry, and what are your plans, and what are my plans in dentistry? And have them just read that and have them answer, oh, well, based on your personal statement, these are your answers. Now, that's difficult. That's extremely difficult. Again, I was lucky enough to have my girlfriend to kind of go through it and be honest with me and tell me. Not everyone has that, but I have come up with, solution or kind of things for that you can use for that. So, good luck to everyone out there. Again, you're making what I believe to be the best decision I've ever made in my professional or personal life. So good luck to you. And remember that there's about over 5,000 seats in dental school that are, that you're applying for. All you need is one. That's it, right? Now, remember that a school is better than no school. And like we've already went through in, earlier in the video, you're only going to apply to schools that you'd want to go to. So even if it's your last choice, again, a school is better than no school, believe me, right? And remember that you ultimately want to be a dentist. If you're applying to dental school, right, dental school is a means to an end, meaning that you are going there to, get an education in dentistry to ultimately do what you've always wanted to do. I don't think any of you grew up saying, oh man, I want to be a dental student for the rest of my life. No. You grew up saying, I want to go, I want to be a dentist, right? So remember that dental school is just a necessary part. And once you get in, you're in, right? And, it's doable. Again, every year, thousands of people did it. I did it, and I had lower scores than you did. Now, I did have a lot of different things on my application that were extremely impactful, and I'll be doing another video kind of, about myself specifically. But, I'd be more than happy to send you my entire PDF of my application. I'll take out, the personal information like my, social security number or my address, but I'd be more than happy to share with you exactly what was on my application. I will put my email here in the description, kind of, give you any information that you need, right? I'm always available for contact with that, or also, I'll give you my phone number if you send me an email. Either way, I'm here for you. And, also, like I said about the whole, having someone like my girlfriend, I know not everyone has a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or maybe people that are helpful for that. I do actually offer, personal statement critiquing, professionally. If you, like I said, if you send me an email about that, any inquiries you have, or even I do coaching for dental school in terms of throughout the entire application, I'll go over it with you, through your whole process from June all the way until December 1st when you get accepted, right? We'll be able to do, any kind of counseling, coaching you'd like to do. So if you're interested in any of that, please, like I said, my email is in the description. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for visiting my channel. This is the first video I've ever done, so I apologize for any type of, bad editing or things like that. I tried to make it interesting. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to leave a comment, or, feel free to send me an email. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much.
Oh, I need someone to love me. too long.